Oh. Okay. Still in the
Yeah,
says
now I can't
2:50
see you now that I hit the button.
That's well, as long as you can see your slides, I think we're good. Okay, it's 3:00.
Do I see anybody though if I turn that off?
No, you're not going to see them because all of their cameras are off.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, do want to welcome everyone in. Good afternoon. My name is Jim O'Neill. I'm an MSW intern with the University of Louisville Traeger. I want to welcome you to the breakout session number 3, entitled "When Did This Happen?" And our presenter and I have been talking a little bit about this, and it's fascinating in the little bit we've talked about. So, I'm going to introduce Dr. Dalzell-Murphy in a second, but a little housekeeping. I want to remind you that we value your feedback. This session is eligible for continuing education credit, and today's speaker has nothing to disclose. If you'd like to receive credit for attending, please stay until the end of the session and complete the evaluation for this session contained in the email you received this morning with the subject line OAC 2023 post-session evaluation link April 15 to 18. We encourage you to actively participate in this session by putting questions and thoughts in the chat. We believe the information presented today will be valuable and informative to all of us. So again, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Murphy.
Hello there. My name is Dr. Deborah Dalzell-Murphy, and I'm on the faculty of the Organization Leadership and Learning Program at University of Louisville, and I am teaching remotely today from the Chicagoland area. So as I was telling Jim, it was sunny an hour ago. It was snowing 2 hours ago. So we're going to take bets on what it's going to be like by the time that we finish. Today's session is going to be about supporting senior workers for lifelong learning in the new world of work. There's a lot of things converging that's going to impact sort of how we all look at our work as helping professionals. And so the intention is for us to implement strategic professional development programming that engages senior workers. We want to support organizational and senior professional in designing flexible situations, support senior professionals in establishing new professional development relationship structures that help us to all to navigate in this new world of work. So this is the audience participation section, and we're going to start early. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to answer the question, where are you right now? And here's how I'd like you to do that. If you could take a piece of paper or your, back of your Starbucks napkin, but make an X and a Y axis, and mark off the bottom and say 5-year increments. If you're under 35, just use 3-year increments. Start around 15 and go up. The y-axis is great to non-existent. So here's what I'd like you to graph on that career timeline. Where were you? What was your career experience at that age? So was it non-existent or was it great? And then draw a line between those different sections. So it might end up looking a little bit like this. I think maybe you can't see my screen changing. Hang on. Can you see my screen changing? Oh, there we go. All right. So where are you? So here again, here's that, here's that X and Y axis. Your line might look a little bit like this, where you've got, easing into a preparation, setbacks, ups, downs, plateaus, and so forth. What does yours look like? Can you take just about 30 seconds and draw yours out? I encourage you to think about what are those situations that impacted your experience. How would you have characterized it? Once you have that for yourself, we'll take a look at it this way. How do we look at careers? So the first question is, what are the factors that you used when deciding how to evaluate your career experience at any one of those stages? Was it dollars? Was it prestige? Was it recognition? Was it artistic creativity? What was it? And that goes into our study of careers. Another factor on how we look at careers is career stages. I think we all have a phenomenon in our head around those phases of preparation, being in, it like college or internships or apprenticeships, moving into world of work where grinding it out is sort of a phase, through maintenance, leadership roles, and so forth. As you look at your career line, how would you characterize those different phases? Another factor in how we look at careers is imposed upon a lifespan. There are those big birthdays with zeros in them. Why don't you star out sort of the data points that you have for yourself in those years that are 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, and what do you see about how that impacted your career or not? Another way that we look at careers is the promoting sustainable careers. And just like sustainable industry, what we're trying to do is to develop situations and people where those careers are sustainable over time. There's opportunities for contribution. There's resources within the environment or the self to be able to refill that person's energy. We'll talk about what that means and how do we foster them. Another factor of looking at careers is the factors that are combining around the new world of work. There are economic and demographic changes and technological changes that are occurring these days that impact what does work look like. More entrepreneurs, more gig workers, more part-time and flexible arrangements. And this impacts then the trajectory and experience of one's career. How about for you? As you look at your career line, were there any areas where you were working part-time, working as a consultant, working at a contingent basis? And the trends tell us that a lot more of us will be doing that over time. Another factor is the new world of development, where other than this arc of going from student at one point in life and then worker for the rest of your career is really obsolete, and we will need to be cycling in phases of development throughout the lifespan and throughout the career phase. And so you can check on your career line where those elements have occurred as well. So we talked a bit about career stages. Now, the research that was done on this model by Donald Super was done in the 50s. So there's a little bit more traditional aspect to it, where what he suggested is there was a period of exploration, a period of establishment, a period of maintenance, and then a period of decline. These were age-related phases of one's career. And so we talked earlier about exploration being sort of assumed to be at the beginning, but parceled off to its own stage. And very rarely will we see that much anymore. And then seeing a precipitous decline at an age of 60s and after. Now, why is that of particular interest and attention? Is because of issues of graying of the workforce, as we're calling it. There are some factors that are coming into play with the graying of the workforce, if you will, that will impact all of us. Now, the percentage of people in Europe that is 60 or older is expected to increase from 24 to 34% by the year 2050. So a third of the population is going to be 60 or older. They're going to be a group to contend with. By 2016, those millennials became the majority age cohort in the work group, and it's going to be 75% of the work group by 2025, spitting distance from today. Boomers, however, are participating in the workforce or the labor force at a much higher rate at each age, much more than prior generations. In 2020, the global population that was age 60 and over went over 1 billion, and that represents 13.5% of the world's population. That number is 2.5 times, that's 250% greater than 1980. So within a generation, it has more than doubled. And it's projected to reach nearly 2 billion by 2050, by the time the next generation is here. The proportion of people 65 or older in paid employment has doubled from 5% to 10% within this millennium, between 2000 and 2016. Older adults are the fastest growing segment of the workforce, and by 2024, a quarter of the workforce is going to be 55 or older. So this is the early stages of a much broader transformation, at least according to these researchers, and so the issue becomes several things. The labor, a few more pieces of data, the labor force participation rate for folks who were traditionally in that stage of decline, that's actually increasing. As the percentage of folks who are in that age that are working is continually increase. And some surveys demonstrate that 60% of workplaces report some sort of intergenerational conflict. So those of us in helping professions need to have awareness of this context and say, all right, so what are we gonna do about it? And another dynamic that's changing between the generations is where your parents or grandparents who were, late teenagers, 20s in the year 1960 would look up at the number of people that they could run across who were in their older ages, like over 85. There were very, very few. As opposed to when our grandchildren will be looking up from those same ages, the folks who are in those older cohorts are going to be a much broader part of the population. So what does that mean? There's a lot more opportunities for otherizing people when there's fewer of them among the population than when they are making up, still making up a bulk of the population. So the dynamics of these global changes, and this is the US census, but the dynamics of these changes of who makes up this workforce is impact what we do and how we do it. And that brings up this issue about ageism, the last socially acceptable prejudice, all right? Some research suggests that there are more negative attitudes toward older people than there are any one of the other marginalized ways that people define themselves. There's a lack of social sanctions or shame for spewing ageist attitudes, whether that's hiring decisions or old folks jokes, things like that. More than half of the people who were surveyed in the workforce have been pushed out or laid off of work, and only 10% of those have actually recouped financially. So that's more than half of the folks who were fully employed at age 50 in the survey of AARP were pushed out or laid off, and only 10% recouped their financial income at that point. The cost, according to AARP, of lost productivity for ageist practices is $850 billion. I mean, how do we contend with that? And there are implications of discriminatory attitudes on callbacks and hiring decisions. And the World Health Organization has suggested that it's not just economic, although that's enormous, but the impact is also that internalized stereotypes like this become impactful to how older folks perceive themselves and their ability to get work done. So the stereotypes that we're contending with include these that are listed here. Less motivated, less willing to engage in training, more resistant to change, not trusting, more likely to experience health problems. And the suggestion is, while those negative stereotypes exist, mostly unjustified based on research that was conducted. These stereotypes can have negative effects on older workers' self-esteem, job performance, well-being, you name it. And they found no significant differences between age groups in objective work performance measures, which reflected older workers, ability to be engaged and loyal and client focused, and better social skills in some cases. One of the stereotypes that keeps coming up is older folks' ability to learn technology. Well, let's look at that in a little bit longer time frame, shall we? So the young folks today can use smartphones and internet-enabled, tweets and twinkles and Sonoses and camera phones and all kinds of things. Well, some of the generations behind them learned to use not only those smartphones, but also the single black rotary dial phone on the dining room table, and reel-to-reel, and 17 different versions of Excel, starting with Lotus 1, 2, 3, DOS terminals and ledgers and so forth. So that means that older folks in the workforce today have learned and forgotten more than these younger generations are using today. What makes us think they won't be able to learn something new? And this is from those generations who stuffed Pop-Tarts into the DVD players anyway, right? Well, another factor that we're going to want to look at is life stages. What's happening with life stages? Daniel Levison suggests that development continues over the course of an adult's life. And what he suggests is that there are cycles of cycle reevaluation, decision, implementation, and then a reevaluation where all of the decisions that were made prior are come into question. And some of those reevaluation stages can be very disconcerting. Those reevaluation stages come very often times in the associated with those phases of life, associated with those birthdays with big zeros in them. And sometimes the reevaluation stages can be very painful or disconcerting at the very least. Erik Erikson suggests that, again, development occurs throughout the lifespan, and that several of these phases of development intersect with those adult years. And some of the dilemmas or tasks that adults are working on that overlaps with their working life include this identity and role confusion, intimacy, isolation, generation versus stagnation, integrity versus despair. What I'll ask you to take away from this is, of course, development continues throughout the lifespan, but even a similar life event, going to school, getting married, whatever, while it could be the same decision and the same event carried out, it could take very different meaning based on what phase of life that you're in. And that also means that challenges take on very different meaning for people who are in different seasons of their life. And this for those of us in helping professions, using these frameworks to impose upon what we're learning from a person could help us to help that person's sense making and move on to making good decisions. I love this quote. Careers are constructed at the boundary between the individual and the social world in which the individual participates. I'm going to say that again. Careers are constructed at the boundary between the individual and the social world in which the individual participates. And this is important as we talk about some of the other factors that occur when we're studying a whole career. And then we hit the issue. There's my beautiful quote. Now, then we're going to talk about career shocks. Career shocks are defined as disruptive and extraordinary events that are, at least to some degree, caused by factors that are outside the individual's control and trigger a deliberate thought process concerning one's career. So this could be a layoff, this could be a divorce, this could be any number of factors that have occurred that one is, relatively speaking, outside of that employee's control, but really rocks their world, rocks their feeling of self-worth and that then limits their agency and self-efficacy and emotional dissonance, or their emotional, stability in some cases. And these are the ability to navigate these events is one of the things that impacts whether we can have a very successful career or not. So we use this lightning bolt here. So back on your career timeline, do you have any career shocks in your experience? I know that I do. And so delineate those shocks then with a little lightning bolt, just so that you can use that to reflect on as we move forward. So what we're trying to develop is sustainability. So if we use the UN dimensions of what sustainability means in general, the principal, priority, and progress. So the responsibility of all the stakeholders to promote resource conservation. So we'll talk about how that impacts careers in just a moment. We want to focus on meeting current needs without compromising, future needs. And society has an obligation to achieve this sustainable progress. And it's a shared responsibility of career stakeholders to protect and foster human development and career development. So that's kind of lofty. But what happens is that in the course of a career timeline, career shocks happen. How is it we can help that person to regain their sense of agency, regain their sense of self-efficacy? There are some predictable crises as well, and those include the Jung conceptions of the morning versus the afternoon of life. And what he contends is one cannot live in the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning. For what was great in the morning will be of little importance, and what was in the morning was true will let the evening become a lie. And so that's a pretty stark description of the variance between those folks who are on on the increase of their life course versus those who are on the second half. And his research suggests that in the first half or the morning of life, people are very focused on molding themselves outward to outward expectations. So these are the folks who are going out, getting a job, making their own life, making a marriage and a family, conforming to outward expectations. What he describes is that in second half of life, the expectations are much more to attain a life that is a more congruence with interior values. So at some point there's a reconsideration of the decisions one made and an attempt to adjust one's life to be more in accordance with those interior values. These can be experienced as a disruptive crisis. In the life structure evaluation phases Levinson and Erickson describe, it can take the form of a discrepancy with this career dream ideal that the person had. They realize they're not going to be leader of the free world or COO of the company that they're at, and have to come to terms with how will they come to some acceptance and a better investment of their life force. In late adulthood, it can be rather traumatic. When the person, when they're employed, is receiving less recognition and no longer like a dominant force within their work environment, it's important to not disregard, but to how can we reinvent a situation where that person can reinvest in something that is of value to them internally. What Erickson suggests is that a lack of successful completion of those adult level stages can be experienced as isolation, stagnation, despair. And so what we're trying to do is develop a sustainable career that provides alignment and agency and meaning to the people who are involved. The researchers who coined these phrases suggest that a sustainable career is a sequence of career events reflected through patterns of continuity over time. But focusing on agency and meaning, the ability, the agency or the ability of, and feeling of that person to be able to get things done, and that they're doing meaningful things and not useless and unnecessary things. Other researchers on the team also suggest that the resources a person has, whether that's their personal resources or the resources within the environment, can impact whether they have the energy to be able to invest in this new facet of their career. This would be called thriving, a psychological state in which they experience a sense of vitality and learning. So those are somewhat in contrast to those stereotypes that we talked about of older people. And this is our challenge now, to say, how do we focus on the thriving, sustainable career for our older adults who are making up a larger and larger proportion of our workforce and our population. Adult development and motivation and thriving. Well, we begin to move from an external to an internal basis for motivation. Some of the research that we've seen suggests that thriving was impacted by work meaningfulness, knowledge transfer, and being included in decision making. So those of us in helping professions within organization need to be asking the questions and supporting the work adjustments where they're working on meaningful tasks, that they have an opportunity to transfer knowledge to, succeeding cohorts of folks behind them, or, peers, and that have some inclusion in decision making instead of being disregarded, as so often happens. Meaningfulness can be reflected in the amount of recognition and respect that older worker gets. And it doesn't have to be, that they're grinding for promotion, but they are, willing to invest themselves in work that is of substantial importance. Here's a model of sustainable careers. And what I would like to draw your attention to is, as we talked about, a career occurs in the boundary between the person and the context, the work that's happening. And so that person is experiencing the sense of agency and is experiencing a sense of meaningful work. They need to be both proactive and adaptable to changes that are happening in the work context. And over time, we need to be continually adjusting the person to career fit. But another contextual issue is this new world of work that we're experiencing, and the researchers that suggest that, hey, we're experiencing changes in what work means from the standpoint of where, how, what, and how tightly tied the worker is. So we all know from the pandemic, the office 9 to 5 is less and less a 100% requirement. We're moving to a flexible anywhere, anytime type of a work environment. And hey, I'm calling to you today from my Chicagoland home office, and we're doing a lot more and more of that. And also another economic element is moving from being an employment relationship, employer to employee, to contractor to client. And there's going to, and because of the technological enablement of different types of work, these kinds of work relationships are going to be more and more. So the content of the work, is it going to be augmented with technology and AI and all of this? And moving from management hierarchies to, hey, agile relationship. I'm here for this project, and then I go away and go work for another either department or another company entirely. And so, how does this come into play? This is the context in which the more and more workers are going to be of those older ages, and so that's going to require different things of our work and require different things of our workers. So, what Jayathasan and Boudreau suggest is that that employers or current employers take a look at what they have in terms of the work rather than thinking of having jobs to fill. They suggest that you take the work, break it into tasks. What can be done by farming that out? What could be done by technology? What can be done by contracting? What can be done by an employee who's here for a project? What needs to be incorporated within a regular job? So you're combining humans and automation. And the way that I've heard folks describe this is, are you going to build or buy, borrow or bot? Are you going to teach somebody that skill? Are you going to hire somebody with that skill? Are you going to use a contractor for that skill? Or are you going to automate it? And these are the kinds of decisions that leaders are going to have to make about the work rather than about jobs. Now, the implication for the work, hey, the number of gig workers is projected to rise and continue to do so. And implications are, hey, you know what, 60% of non-working respondents would be willing to work a flexible schedule with more reasonable hours, and would take a potential pay cut per hour in order to make that attractive to them. Implications for the worker are that we go from a fixed set of skills that were developed 20 years ago at school to those that were having a refillable repertoire of resources that you're able to give. And one researcher described it as domain skills are brittle. The half-life of skills these days is something like 5 to 8 years. So the things that people are learning in school today are going to be obsolete. Potentially half of those skills will be obsolete in 8 years, and so on and so forth. So what's becoming more and more important are the power skills, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, but also demonstrating different characteristics like proactivity and social networking and continuous learning. These are factors that weren't a part of that maintenance level before, but now they are. People need to recognize that the workers' motivations change over time, but these can be impacted by available resources. People are motivated to put forth effort if there's a good return for them. If they don't see a return, they're not going to be motivated to put out the effort to learn something new if it's something that they don't think is of high value. So we're recognizing that we can impact that is important. So we're going to move to the terrain of development tactics. So we have this as our context of new world of work. This context of a changing population. We have this context of employees facing predictable crises. So the development tactics that we're able to draw on are occurring in this context between the person and their work context. Some of the development tactics for supporting senior workers in the new world of work include, coaching using these frameworks, recognizing where, certain behaviors and feelings that are expressed are coming from those resulting from reactions of the ageism, reacting from age expected changes because of their life stage. Things like that, helping people to, by individual coaching, helping them to process those feelings and make plans going forward, and always encouraging with a growth mindset the ability to learn and develop new skills. Another tactic that was described in the literature that I accessed developing this is an RBS, or a reflected best self portrait. Job crafting is another suggestion, particularly in this world of fluid work boundaries. Reverse mentoring is something that actually I'm a part of right now, having a young man who was a student in one of my classes now is coaching me on how to use some software for developing online skills. A tactic of peer coaching and small group work are some items that I've used with very successful impact in some other organizations. So that reflected best self. So what we're trying to develop here is a directed reflection on who they are when they are at their best. We want somebody to develop this picture of, I'm really good when I am teaching others, or whatever the issue is. I'm really good when I'm organizing code, whatever that skill is. Getting somebody to be able to articulate those things that they're good at, but from socially embedded feedback. They should be gathering and recalling what they got feedback on when they were at their best, and recording that so that we're looking for themes. So they're considering gathered feedback and appreciation. We're looking for positively balanced or positive stories. Making I am statements. So I am, I am a good teacher, or I'm a good organizer, whatever that works for your client. What we're trying to do is to articulate specific example stories and look for strength themes that come through that, and having your client then develop those portraits of when they're at their best. And then we were able to use those as decision factors when looking for what in the new work environment could help them to feel agency and meaning in the type of work that they're pursuing. Along that same vein is opportunities for job crafting. And in this case is where we're collaborating on what that job could look like. So that take the form of task, relationship, or cognitive crafting. Job crafting, or task crafting rather, is an opportunity to develop a job agreement, or an agreement on their job to do more of what they're good at and like to do, and less of what they don't. Pipe dream, yes, but you won't get any of what you don't negotiate. Relationship crafting is in a similar vein, in that you design a work agreement where we're working more with clients, or working more with these types of clients, or working more without clients, but whatever relationship factors are most meaningful to that employee. Can we build a job requirement that contains more of that? Cognitive crafting is a little bit more like positive thinking. Is there a way that we can think about our tasks differently? So we use the example of the stonemasons who are either, I'm breaking rocks all day, or I'm preparing the material for a cathedral. How you look at the tasks and how you tie it to that greater good is going to have a big impact on how that person feels about it. So crafting the different types of work and tasks that you do, with whom you do them, and for what reasons. This is what job crafting is, and this can support the development of your senior workers. Another tactic to draw from is peer coaching, and I've seen this done in a couple of different ways, and that could be one-way or two-way coaching. One-way coaching is training up a cadre of coaches that are embedded within the work group, and they do one-way coaching, coach to client, support for your employee on how they work, what work they do, and what things that they want to achieve. The two-way coaching is two peers who are coaching each other, a little bit less power dynamic there, and they're working together to support each other's goals. Another very interesting tactic is reverse mentoring. So let me give you some examples of that. So right now, I gave you the example of the young man who was my student and is now my mentor in learning how to use products like Rise to develop e-learning modules. And that looks like me asking him questions. And he knows more about this than I do. It's me sending him my work, saying, can you please give me some feedback? And me going, yeah, I have to ask this young whippersnapper for help. Yes, but he makes my work better. Some other examples, it started with GE when Jack Welch paired up executives with young folks who were skilled in tech issues for the purpose of teaching those executives to be better and more agile at the technology that they were using. Some other examples include pairing up diverse, more recently graduated doctors with administrators in hospitals for the purposes of teaching those administrators to be more sensitive to diversity, equity, and inclusive issues. English language teaching in Columbia. I read another article where they developed the current teachers by using pre-service teaching interns, and they collaborated on using some of the new tactics that the interns brought and the classroom management that the older teachers brought, and they were able to learn from each other. But it was developed in order to improve the current teachers, the senior teachers, tactics that they were using to teach English. In a similar vein, Procter & Gamble matched up male mentors with young female managers, and they were able then to support those male executives' approaches to diverse and inclusive environments. So those are some examples. These should be it should always be presented in the context of everyone consistently learning new skills. So it's not a punitive arrangement, and there has to have been established culture of everybody should be learning something in order for this to be comfortable, and for the trust that underlies the ability to make mentoring happen. In order for that to happen, there has to be this context of and culture of learning. The rewards that are presented for the mentors or the proteges should be focused on what their motivations are. So the earlier stage professionals might be more motivated by these factors, helping them with their promotional opportunities, where the executives might be more motivated by, I need to learn this skill and I need to learn it quick. And whether it's not about promotion, but it's about efficiency and learning, and it needs to be very focused on giving what those players want out of the game. So very frequently, there's a pre-conference observation, post-conference. You sit down and say, hey, what are we going to work on? How are we going to work on it? Do the work. How did we do? And reverse mentoring can be very, very powerful. But the challenges are those different power differentials and how you navigate those, and pretty much the context in which you're operating is going to make a difference. Small group coaching is one of the most powerful factors that, if you take nothing else away from today, I hope you use small group coaching in your work environment. And here's what this means. For me, this is a small group, 6 people of peers. They could be, different levels, but for this purpose, they're at the same power dynamic. The engagement is time delimited, and there's a commitment to a personal project or goal. Now, it doesn't have to be like weight loss, but it could be a professional goal, but it's something that they're pursuing on their own. I'd use this as within the board of directors for the Organization Development Network of Chicago. And here's how we've used it. We put groups of 6 members together. They committed to meeting every 2 weeks by Zoom. And this is, pre-pandemic too. And they committed to, hey, I'm going to be working on this goal. Each session then, each person had a period of time where they were able to say, I'm going to tell you about what my project is and what I've worked on in these last 2 weeks. Then they got feedback typed in the chat, and then they got feedback provided verbally. And everybody then received a couple of things that I think are critical to making this work. One, what I call permitted attention. And what that means is I didn't have to fight for my airtime. I didn't have to wonder whether this person was interested in me telling my whole story. This was designed into the event, into the structure for me to be able to be heard. And it's very, very powerful. In addition, there's some built-in accountability and support. So I knew that in 2 weeks' time, this group was going to be asking me, well, you said you were going to do X, did you or didn't you? And that provided some built-in, accountability and support for me making progress on the goal. There was also different perspectives that I gained from getting feedback from different parties. I have seen this work in that professional organization. And in fact, all of the board members who are serving right now came to the organization with that as being one of the first things that they did. So in terms of its improving engagement and productivity with the organization, it's unprecedented. And I think that you should try it. There are other permutations of this structure are cross-generational small group coaching. In this case, I would suggest small groups again, 6, time delimited, people that represent different generations or races or whatever the focus issue of collaboration is. And they should be working together on a commitment to a common company project or goal. When you have differential power relationships and other diversity factors, it's a little harder to develop the trust. So therefore, I would say, commit to a common company goal. You can move then to some of the personal projects later on, but those are some factors that I would recommend. One of the aspects that's like an organizing principle for how we will look at later life work engagement. We're looking at the work design, health management, individual development, knowledge management, transition to retirement, continued employment, and retirement coverage. There are some Nordic countries that have flexicurity is what they call it. But there's also this factor of, hey, is this a person that needs benefits to live? So are they going to have to work full time? There's a lot of different questions that come into helping one individual find a work environment that works for them, because they might need some of these other elements. So back to your timeline. What I'd like you to do now is to take out that paper we started 40 minutes ago. Some questions to ponder. Do you feel like you're thriving? Do you feel that sense of agency? Do you feel that vitality? And do you feel that meaning? Is your career sustainable? And how close is your current state to your reflected best self? What would be in it if you wrote that portrait today? And are you using that, invoking that today? If you were to job craft, what would you want to change first? How much energy do you have around pursuing a peer coaching group? Because I really recommend them. If it's your job to support senior workers, how will you apply what you learned about career timelines, trends, shocks, and expected shocks, if you will? And then how will you apply one of the development tactics? And my name is Dr. Deborah Dalzell-Murphy. While I am not on campus, I am always available, and you should reach out to me at this email address if I can be of assistance to you as you are either developing yourself, developing your work environments, developing your senior workers. And I look forward to hearing what you accomplish.
So we have a number of questions in the chat. If you want, can you see them, or you want me to take care of them?
I can see them now. I'm sorry, I haven't been paying attention to them. I needed to do that. All right, I'm going to read them out. Jessica asked, is it reasonable to think that we need to diversify our salary and benefits packages to attract various generations? I'll give you my opinion is absolutely, absolutely. We can't be a one-size-fits-all society anymore. I think that's very true. There's a couple of things that impact that, and I think that is this move to tech-enabled work, which means that people can be working from anywhere and can benefit from somebody's effort, even if it's just to work on a project. But there's also these elements of the Affordable Care Act, which changes the power dynamic between, do I need a full-time employer in order to have my benefits to live? There are certain questions like that mean, do we need to look at that? Absolutely. How do we begin to unpack our thinking and send it on a different trip? I think some of that, the suggestions that they gave on reflected best self would be a good place to start. So not only what were you when you were at your best, but what kind of environment was there when you were at your best, and how do we pursue that? And if you are an employer or a helping professional, then say, hey, what are other ways that we could go about that? I really think that that's really important. People just seem to think that you're going to retire when you reach a certain age. What's happening to stop this bias? Some of the things I think there have to be a multiple different directions for this kind of thing to change, right? One, just the very fact that there'll be more of us will force the issue. Some of the issues last year around filling jobs made employers be a little bit more flexible. This year, I'm not hearing the same sort of trends, but also just happening to stop this bias. It's going to have to be much like some of the other biases that we're fighting with as a society. Is what do you allow when you hear somebody say something that's not appropriate or demonstrates a bias? Is to challenge. And so we'll need to combine our efforts to challenge when people make ageist comments or make decisions on ageist bases. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be people being loud, people working together, and for all of us here, role modeling the right way is suggesting, hey, do we have any age diversity on this team, just like we did when we had to say, do we have race diversity or gender diversity? Do we have age diversity here? Reverse mentoring, Jessica, I'm glad you like it. And I wouldn't, I've tried almost all of these suggestions that I made, and I am benefiting from it. And I hope you do too. And it's sort of took me, it wasn't easy for me to have to admit that, yes, I have to learn from somebody younger than me. It took me a while, but it's really cool. What about when older adults are still learning and have new skills, but because of the age, people think that they don't know and prejudge because of age? Well, I think that's a universal factor, isn't it? And I think that that's going to be very as varied as the situations that you could come up with. But right off the bat, it's going to have to be facing potential issues. So I met a man when I was networking probably 3 years ago. He was older than me, so he was in his 60s at that point, but was also looking for an HR job, as was I. Well, he presented himself in such a way where one of the first things he described about himself was, I'm Joe Smith and I do this. And today, this week I'm working on training for this triathlon. And I was commenting to a friend of mine later, like, look how he slid in this element of making sure that whoever he's introducing himself to, the first thing that they heard was something about his, vitality and energy. So I think that when people prejudge, we're going to have to figure out how we handle that, but making sure that people see the best side of us and that we put that forward first about, what people need to know about us. But, it is going to take us all banding together. Mona says, reverse mentoring is cool and learning from each other. I'm almost 76 and I love learning from our students at Traeger. Each of them has been honoring to me and I to them, and it's very informal, but I feel it. Well, Mona, those are probably the vibes that you're putting off, and love to hear more about what you're learning and how you approach those relationships, because it sounds like we could all learn from the tactics you're using and how to do more of that. I'm open to some more questions here. And as you're thinking about them, again, I'm Dr. Deborah Dalzell-Murphy. I'm also a experience some of the same things that we've described for you here, in that I'm a new academic. So I'm a year and a half into my academic career, because I got my PhD at the tender age of 56, and I'm having great fun in this second career. And I hope that you are able to do so. I know that some of our colleagues are doing that, and I hope, as in your helping profession, that you are here to help spread the word about how we can really get the best from our older professional colleagues. Do I present to organizations? Yes. So I spent the first 30 years of my career in HR and organization development and talent development. So that's most of what I've done in my professional life. And I would be happy to talk with you offline here too about what your organization would benefit from. Joe. Oh, thanks, Joe. That's really nice. I'm going to put you on my reflected best portrait suggestion there. I really appreciate the feedback. And when you take time to do that, it helps me. Thank you. I hope you're having a great program. My experience as a speaker has been, I had gotten top-notch support. It's just so well organized and so well supported. And I can't wait to do this again. Jessica, it's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Doctor. We got about, I think, about a minute and a half or 2 minutes left, and we can leave that for questions. I just need to intervene and do a little bit of housework real quick. I want to thank everybody for participating in Breakout Session 3. When did this happen? On a personal note, it was very, very informative for me. Starting a new career in about 2 weeks, so I got a lot out of this. But I just want to let everybody know, CEUs are available, and there is an evaluation that you should have received an email this morning with the subject line OAC 2023 post-session evaluation link, April 15 to 18. And like I said, thank you very much, Doctor. This has been an amazing session.
That's super nice of you to say, and I would be delighted to continue the conversation on however we could do that. Maybe we should all just be a small group.
That'll work. I don't know if they're going to kick us off, but we could stay on until they do.
Okay. So let's see. So Mona's works for Traeger. Jessica, Joe, where do you guys work? They probably getting a break in.
All right. Well, everybody's either probably getting ready to go for dinner, yeah, or depending on the time zone. So again, I really want to thank you for this. And like I said, everything you were talking about is definitely very personal to me right now. So I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I am so delighted to hear that you're, kicking off your, next career, and I wish you the best of luck. Please do keep in touch. I'd love to, to hear how you're doing.
I will, absolutely. All right, looks like pretty much everybody is going away, so I'm just going to go ahead and close this if you don't mind.
That's great. So there were 3 people on? Was there Mona, Jessica, and Joe?
Yeah, there's actually Dr. Joe is still on, Carla and Marvita. So if they've got something they want to bring up, obviously they could unmute and help. They're starting to go.
Oh, okay. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Okay.
And you too,
I'm going to
Jim.
stop recording. All right. Thank you very much, Dr.